So you've probably all heard a number of different pieces of advice when it comes to personal finance and investing. Some people say save 15% for your retirement, invest in low cost index funds, start a budget. And certainly I've been giving this type of advice. But what I've realized as I've talked to more and more people is that there is no one size fits all approach to this. I think as a metaphor, and bear with me as I work through this, a boat in the middle of the ocean is how we should just start thinking about what our journey is in personal investing. And so when we're talking about how do we approach personal finance, we need to think about how each of us starts in a different boat with different conditions in the water. And there are different stages. And at each stage, we have different tools at our disposal. And we can use those tools to help us move to the next stage. But oftentimes, we don't actually want to implement strategies that don't make sense for the stage that we're in. Using this metaphor of a boat at sea, there's a lot of things that we can talk about. There are waves, there's wind, we have the potential to sink, and we're all trying to move forward. Some of us were given a smaller boat with broken sails or holes in our hull, while others have, mega yachts that are just driving through big waves. There is a phase for some people, and this all is dependent on where you start in life, but there's possibly a phase early on where you don't have a lot of income and you're actually in debt. And that's, the same as having your boat have holes in it, right? Again, so you're probably still moving through the ocean. So you're catching some wind, or you have some amount of gas left, and that represents sort of any income that you have. So you're moving through the ocean, but it's a bit precarious. You have the potential to keep taking on water and sinking at any time, and especially if there are strong gusts and big waves, your boat is really going to suffer damage. And so you really can't think about optimizing your route to wherever you're going, or picking up the right wind patterns, or trying to go faster, right? All you can really think about at this stage is just plugging holes and getting water out of the vessel. And so that represents, any sort of like credit card debt, student loan debt, any personal debt that you have that is keeping you from being able to move forward. We don't even need to talk about optimizing your returns in your portfolio. What you should be thinking about is, how do I eliminate all the damage that's already being done constantly? And so you need to start thinking about repairs. So you got to start plugging up all of those holes, patching any leaks, and you got to start like bailing water out of your ship, right? And so a lot of times people don't realize that this is holding them back because they have enough income to support the amount of debt that they have, but they're never accruing more than that. So they're never building their personal wealth over time. It doesn't matter how fancy your ship is or how big it is. If you're bringing on more water than you're able to get rid of, you're never going to move forward. You're just going to keep sinking. It might feel like you're moving forward, but a moving vessel that is taking on water is still going to sink. There is no ideal salary or ideal amount of money that you need to have coming in order to support when you should optimize or what strategy you should take. Really, it's just a question of, are you able to accumulate more wealth than you have to spend? And so if you're spending all of your income to pay down these really high interest loans, what you have to think about is patching those up and getting water to stop coming in. And right now, all you're doing is probably, grabbing pails and throwing water overboard. But that's not really the problem, right? Yes, you have to do that, but you also have to patch the holes. So, anyone with sort of high interest debt especially can think about this stage as just patching holes. And that can be achieved through, different strategies. And I won't necessarily talk about what the most ideal strategy is, because it depends. You can certainly talk about a personal loan that can help you consolidate your debt at a lower interest rate, pay that down. This is really the phase where you have to make tough decisions, because it's going to affect sort of where you're going in life. It'll affect your day-to-day life, because if you're unable to pay your obligations, you're going to have to think about how you can cut down on things that you probably are spending money on that you could do without. So that's kind of like the first phase of the metaphor. You're patching up any damage that's done to the ship. And then you can start making improvements to the ship, fortifying the ship. So once you have like anything that's actively sinking your ship, once you have that taken care of, all your sort of high interest loans, then you can talk about fortifying the ship. And that's, adding repairs to things that will make sure you can withstand any sort of rough seas. And this we can call sort of your emergency fund and your savings account. And this is to help you withstand any environmental changes, right? So anything that comes your way, whether it's losing a job, paying a medical bill, paying for an auto repair, you need to be prepared to handle those things. And so, your ship is now free from major damage, but maybe you need to reinforce it. Maybe you need to add some weatherproofing. Maybe you need to fix a sail or some rust. That's what we can think of as just creating a buffer in your life such that you can withstand any of those things. And a lot of times I consider this part, that ability to be able to say no to things that are wrong in your life. So when you have a financial cushion in your life, it's really just a tool for you to use when something comes along that you don't want to have to say yes to because it's not right for you in your life. But a lot of times we have to say yes to it because we just don't have the money to say no. Because really in so many ways, we as individuals only have the power to walk away from things. We don't really have the power to shift things in life unless we're extraordinarily wealthy. All we can really do is have enough money to be like, thank you, but no thank you, I'm moving on. So again, this is sort of the portion of the financial journey where you're fortifying your ship so that you can move through, you'll move faster through clear waters, but you're also be able to withstand these choppier waters. So after you have your kind of like small emergency fund, you're out of debt, now we can really talk about like raising the sails, patching those sails, investing in maybe like an energy generator. So if it's like a gas or coal ship, whatever we want to use as the metaphor, basically these are your tools to increase the speed at which you're moving through the water, right? And so this really is about increasing your income. And so this can be the phase where you are working on, your side hustles, your just increasing your asks at work for salary, for your compensation. This is where you are thinking about new skills, about your education, and you're consistently investing in creating more income and more forward movement beyond just being able to withstand any sort of rough seas. And in this phase, I would argue that you can start to put away your just basic portfolio. So this is when you're really just like looking at investing on a regular basis, and you'll be putting this money hopefully into your retirement accounts. You're putting it into any sort of tax optimized accounts. You don't have to think about optimizing necessarily your portfolio because really you're just putting in to get market returns at this point. You don't have as much money to think about placing any sort of small bets on things that might pay off in a greater way later, because you're really just focused on like wealth preservation over time. And again, it won't be a huge portion at this point, but it's enough to start just like socking it away. I would say that once you sort of are in this phase where you've eliminated debt, you've fortified yourself with an emergency fund, you've started investing in your retirement accounts, in just a broad market ETF, then you can really start thinking about optimization. And this is like not like a blunt force, put up the sails or shove coal. This is really looking at what is the most ideal route to get through this next section. So that could be like, oh, I'm anticipating rough waters ahead in this way, so I'm going to veer around it. Or I'm going to optimize the way the sail is positioned so that I can take advantage of different gusts of wind. And in this scenario, you can actually take on a bit more risk in certain areas of your portfolio with the anticipation that it might not work out exactly as you thought it would, but you have higher potential to do better in those scenarios. And so you have like the bulk of your portfolio will obviously be sort of just like in your standard broad market ETF, but you can have some tactical moves too. You can start taking like higher risk because you're able to diversify your portfolio. I would still argue like It's probably not in anyone's best interest to play the stock market, but certainly you can purchase additional low cost index funds that are sector or market cap based. This will help you modulate when market conditions are different, just gives you more tools to be able to navigate the waters of any sort of economic environment. There's no kind of one size fits all model. There are many rules that you can apply obviously to different scenarios in your life, and they're all valid in different ways. But really taking a holistic approach, a really high level view of what a personal finance and investing journey looks like is about sort of first fundamentally looking at what stage you are in your investing journey, because really it doesn't make sense, right, to optimize your route if you're not even moving, if you're taking on water and you're just sinking, because no matter what you do, you're just going to end up at the bottom of the ocean again. Whereas a lot of people want to tell you, here's the rule to getting to financial freedom, you really have to tackle it sort of one stage at a time, and those to me are sort of the big stages. And again, what I want to stress is that someone who has like a giant yacht but is taking on tons and tons of water and has so much weight on that yacht can also equally sink, right? Having a small sailboat, if you are sturdy, you don't have any water coming on, you don't have extra weight that you can't handle. Really, it's about being able to handle the environment that you're in. And that's really just about keeping your obligations lower than your means to pay those obligations. And then having that buffer allows you to fortify yourself and then to grow even more. So again, maybe not the most sophisticated metaphor, but it's one that I've been thinking more about, just because many times I tend to say like, hey, just invest in a low cost index fund, or just start investing now. But a lot of times I realize that some people are at different stages in their journey and they can't really tackle even the basics of investing until they've covered their early stages of fortifying their financial well-being before that. So yeah, hopefully the metaphor makes sense and is a little bit helpful, but thanks for bearing with me on this metaphor.